Welcome to my channel. Please don't forget to subscribe to our romance story family for more stories. The great hall of Eldrose Keep fell silent the moment King Kalan rose from his throne. The torches flickered in fear, and even the air seemed to bow. Every wolf present, generals, nobles, guards, lowered their heads as the Alpha King descended the marble steps, his power rolling through the chamber like thunder trapped in a cage. All but one bowed. Lyra stood at the center of the hall, wrists bound, her chin lifted just enough to hide the tremor in her throat. She could feel their stares, the whispering contempt of 100 eyes. Omega, barren, worthless, forgotten. The words lashed at her, yet she refused to flinch. Omegas weren't chosen, they were discarded. That was the law. That was her fate. And still, the king's eyes found her. I never believed in fate, until the moment I felt his eyes on me, and the world stopped breathing. Kalan's gaze was not pitying. It was sharp, dangerous, a storm trapped behind gold. When his eyes met hers, she felt them like a touch, searing, heavy, possessive. He moved closer, each step measured, deliberate, the sound of his boots echoing like a heartbeat. The court held its breath. Lyra's pulse raced faster than any drum. When he stopped before her, the world seemed to narrow to just them. The moment his hand brushed mine, the bond flared to life, wild, undeniable, and I knew nothing about my fate would ever belong to me again. She tried to step back, to breathe, to pretend the spark was an illusion, but the pull between them tightened like invisible threads wrapping around her ribs. His eyes met hers, gold, burning, ancient, and in that single heartbeat she understood, he hadn't chosen this either. Yet destiny had drawn them together like prey and predator, or something far more dangerous. He lifted her chin with 2 fingers. His touch was deceptively gentle, yet it burned like lightning through her veins. Do you wish for freedom, Omega? His voice was low, smooth silk woven with steel. Freedom. The word tasted like a dream she had no right to. She couldn't finish. The air had fled her lungs. Kalan leaned in, his breath warm against her cheek, carrying the scent of cedar and storm. Then earn it, he murmured. Survive one night in my bed, and I'll set you free. Gasps erupted around them like sparks in dry tinder. No one had expected it, the Alpha King choosing an Omega, not for a bond, but for a test. Lyra's heart pounded so violently she could feel it in her wrists. She knew what such a night meant. Survival would not come easily. To lie beside the Alpha King was to step into the fire and pray to emerge unburned. She met his gaze again, and for the first time, she saw something flicker behind his golden eyes, challenge. And if I don't survive? His lips curved, dark and merciless. Then you won't need freedom. The words hit her like a blow. Yet somewhere deep, something fierce unfurled, the same wild defiance that had kept her alive all these years. He was daring her to try. And the most dangerous part. She wanted to. When the guards released her chains, Kalan seized the silver links that still hung from her wrists and led her forward. The court murmured behind them, envy, disbelief, fear, but Lyra couldn't hear their voices over the pounding in her ears. The heavy doors closed behind them, sealing her fate in silence. Kalan didn't look back once. His stride was long, relentless, and she struggled to keep up, the sound of her bare feet echoing against the stone. When he pushed open the doors to his chamber, her breath caught. It wasn't a room, it was a world. A fire burned low in the hearth, casting amber light across fur-lined floors and vaulted ceilings carved with wolves. The air smelled of pine, smoke, and power, of him. He released her at last. The chains clattered to the floor. She should have run. Instead, she stood rooted, heart racing, while the Alpha King circled her like a predator gauging the strength of its prey. He didn't touch her, not yet, but every step he took wound the tension tighter, like a bowstring about to snap. His gaze swept her slowly, tracing the line of her neck, the pulse fluttering just beneath her skin, the rise and fall of her breath. Why do you look away, little wolf? His voice slid through the air like velvet over steel. You begged for freedom, yet now you tremble before it. I'm not afraid, she said, and hated how unsteady it sounded. Kalan's lips curved faintly, more shadow than smile. Lies. He came closer, his heat brushing against her back, his breath grazing the nape of her neck. The silence stretched, electric, unbearable. Then prove it, he murmured. Her body betrayed her. Every nerve seemed drawn to his presence, every breath shallow and uneven. She wanted to move, to fight, to not want this, but the restraint in his proximity was worse than touch. When his fingers finally brushed hers, the contact was featherlight, accidental, yet it felt like fire igniting through her veins. Lyra gasped and pulled back, too late. His lips twitched. One touch, he said softly, and already you tremble. Her cheeks burned. She stepped away, but he followed, not closing the distance, just letting the tension stretch like silk between them. It means nothing, she said. He tilted his head, golden eyes catching the light like molten metal. Nothing. Then why does your heart race like a trapped bird? She crossed her arms to hide her shaking hands. Because you're the Alpha King, and I'm not fool enough to forget what that means. Kaelin's expression softened, but his tone deepened, rough, dangerous. You think my strength lies in what I take. You're wrong. My strength lies in what I deny. Her breath caught. He moved closer again, his knuckles brushing her cheek, gentle, deliberate, devastating. If a touch makes you shiver, he whispered, how will you survive my bed? The words seared into her skin like a mark. She couldn't look away from him now, couldn't breathe. He leaned in, his mouth near her ear. Tell me, Lyra, he murmured, is that fear I smell, or something sweeter? Her pulse thundered. You're trying to frighten me. Perhaps, he said, his tone almost amused. Or perhaps I'm trying to see what it takes to make you break. She lifted her chin, defiance burning through her fear. You'll have to wait forever. Kaelin's eyes darkened, heat pooling in the depths. Forever, he said quietly, is exactly how long I have. That night, long after the world had gone silent, I lay awake with his touch still burning against my skin. I told myself it was fear, but my heart whispered another truth. If destiny had truly tied me to him, then I was already lost, and the most terrifying part was how desperately I wanted to be found. Morning light warmed my skin, but it couldn't chase away the memory of his touch. I had dreamed of his eyes, his voice, his nearness, and waking only made the longing worse. I told myself I should forget him, but my heart betrayed me with every breath. The fire between us. Lyra's defiance still hung in the air, fragile as glass. Kaelin watched her in silence, golden eyes gleaming through the firelight. The flicker of the flames painted his features in shadow and gold, a god carved from storms and restraint. You would rather break than bow, he murmured, his voice low enough to tremble through her bones. Yes. The word came out steady. Stronger than she expected. A sound rumbled from his chest, not quite a laugh, not quite a growl, a sound that vibrated through the space between them. He moved in a blur, so fast she barely caught her breath before her back met the carved post of his bed. His arms braced on either side of her, his body a wall of heat and power. He didn't touch her, not truly, but his nearness caged her in, leaving no air, no escape. Strength bends, he murmured. Power submits. Only pride shatters. Lyra's hands pressed against his chest, not in surrender, but defiance. Then let it. His laugh was soft, dark, and dangerous. Defiant little wolf, he said, his breath brushing her lips. Do you think I can't bend you? She met his gaze without flinching. Maybe you can, she said, her pulse racing, but I'll never choose it. Something flickered behind his eyes, surprise, then hunger. He caught her wrists, pinning them above her head in one smooth motion. The sudden restraint stole her breath, though his grip wasn't cruel. Careful, he whispered. You fight with claws too small for your cage. He leaned closer, his nose grazing the line of her jaw. The ghost of the contact sent shivers rippling through her body. And yet, he breathed, you make me want to see how far you'll go before you bite. Her heart thundered. You enjoy this, she whispered. I enjoy you, he corrected softly. The way you tremble, the way you lie with your eyes and speak with your heartbeat. Let me go. Say please. The words weren't cruel, they were a challenge. A test. She glared at him, silver eyes blazing. You want obedience. Find another Omega. For a heartbeat, something cracked in him, a flash of admiration hidden beneath the predator's grin. Then, slowly, he released her. The moment her hands fell free, the air between them changed. Kaelin stepped back, though only barely. His restraint was visible in every taut line of his body, in the way his jaw flexed as if to keep himself from reaching for her again. Lyra pressed a trembling hand to her chest, trying to steady her breath. I felt it first, an ache beneath my ribs, sharp and sudden, as though the bond itself were pulling me toward danger. The air shifted, colder than before, and for a heartbeat I could swear a pair of eyes watched me from the shadows. Not his. Something else. Something that wanted me for a very different reason. He turned toward the fire, speaking lowly, almost to himself. You mistake this for cruelty. But it's not. Then what is it? He looked back at her, his golden gaze molten. Restraint. The single word landed like a blow. He moved closer again, slower this time, deliberate, as though he was fighting a war inside himself. His hand lifted, hovering beside her cheek, not touching, just close enough that the air seemed to hum between their skin. You think power is in what I take, he murmured, echoing his earlier words. But true power, little wolf, is in what I deny. Her pulse stuttered. Then why won't you deny me my freedom? A smile ghosted over his lips, not cruel, but aching. Because, he said softly, I don't want to. The truth in his tone sent a tremor through her. He reached for the cloak draped across his throne, dark fur lined with silver thread, unmistakably his. Before she could step back, he swung it around her shoulders. The weight of it swallowed her whole, the fur brushing her bare skin, the scent of him wrapping around her like a storm she couldn't escape. Why this? She demanded, clutching the fabric. Kaelin's voice deepened, resonant, carrying the quiet power of command. Because now, he said, you carry my scent. Her heart skipped a beat. You're marking me. I'm reminding every creature in this castle who dares to whisper your name, he said, stepping closer, his gaze burning into hers, that you are under my protection. Your protection, she echoed bitterly. You mean your claim. His smile was a shadow. Sometimes they are the same. Her pulse betrayed her, quick, frantic, as his hand rose again, not to touch, but to trace the air beside her throat. You feel it, don't you? He whispered. The way it seeps into you. The way the world will smell me on your skin. Her breath came shallow. It means nothing. Kaelin's laughter rolled low and quiet, a sound that carried more danger than thunder. You smell like fire when you lie. The words curled through the air like smoke, wrapping around her. Her knees trembled, though her pride kept her upright. She wanted to scream at him, to tear off the cloak, to break the spell he had wrapped around her, but the truth was more dangerous. She didn't want to, because even as she hated what he represented, his power, his arrogance, her body craved the warmth he left in his wake. Kaelin leaned closer, his breath ghosting over her lips now. You think this makes you mine? She whispered, her voice barely holding. No, he said, his tone a low growl, raw and certain. It means you already were. The air left her lungs. Before she could answer, he turned from her, not to leave, but to master himself. His hand flexed at his side, his jaw tight. Go, he said roughly. Before I forget what I promised. Her voice trembled. Freedom. No. His eyes met hers, burning gold. Restraint. Lyra barely slept that night. The cloak lay heavy beside her, its scent invading her thoughts, its warmth clinging to her skin like a memory she couldn't erase. She replayed every word, every look. The way he had held back, the way his voice broke when he said go. But there was no freedom in her chest, only confusion. Because she'd seen something in him that didn't fit the monster they whispered about. Beneath the Alpha King's power, beneath his threat, there was a man fighting something as fierce as her own fear. And that was far more dangerous. By dawn, her decision was made. She would leave before the night claimed her again. The castle slept in silence when Lyra rose. The moon still hung above the towers, cold and silver. Barefoot, she slipped through the corridor, every step careful, every heartbeat loud enough to betray her. She reached the outer courtyard without a sound. The wind bit her skin. The gate stood ahead, half shrouded in mist. Freedom. Her chest tightened. She took one more step. And collided with steel. No, not steel. Flesh. A hand clamped around her arm, hard as iron. Her breath caught. Her gaze lifted, and met gold. Kaelin. The Alpha King stood before her, half in shadow, his expression carved from fury and something else. Something raw. You thought you could run from me. His voice was low, lethal, trembling with control. I had to, she whispered. If I stayed, you'd destroy me. He laughed, a sound as sharp as breaking glass. Destroy you. He leaned close enough that his breath brushed her ear. I'd burn kingdoms before I let you go. Her knees weakened. You can't keep me here. He caught her chin, forcing her gaze to his. I can, and I will. The words should have terrified her. They did, but fear wasn't the only thing coursing through her veins. He saw it, the tremor in her pulse, the flicker in her eyes, and his voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You're trembling again. Because you won't let me breathe, she hissed. Because, he murmured, his thumb brushing her lower lip, you're still trying to pretend you don't want what's already yours. Her breath caught. Stop, she said. Say it like you mean it, he replied, stepping closer. His restraint was agony, hovering on the edge of touch, of surrender, of ruin. The tension coiled between them until she thought she might shatter. Let me go, she breathed. You don't want that. I do. Liar. The word hit her like thunder. Before she could speak, his hands framed her face, rough palms cradling her with a gentleness that undid her completely. His eyes burned, wild and human all at once. Do you know what it does to me? He whispered. To feel you fight with your words, but cling to me with your heart. She froze. Her hands had fisted into his tunic without her realizing. His breath hitched, and for the first time, the Alpha King trembled. If I kiss you again, he said softly, I won't stop. Lyra's pulse broke against her ribs. Kaelin's mouth hovered a breath from hers, his control fraying by the second. Don't, she whispered, but she didn't move. I turned, and there he was, standing in the moonlit corridor, eyes burning with 1,000 unspoken truths. For a moment, I thought he would reach for me, close the distance, quiet the storm he'd put in my chest. But he said nothing. He only looked at me, as though I were both his salvation and his ruin, then he walked away. And the echo of his footsteps hurt more than any enemy ever could. The night of no return. Sleep never came. His absence clung to me like a second skin, and no matter how fiercely I tried to tear him from my thoughts, my heart kept whispering his name. I told myself I didn't need him, but every lonely breath exposed the lie. The wind howled through the courtyard, carrying the scent of pine and the sharp bite of frost. Lyra stood caged in Kaelin's shadow, her pulse trembling like a captive bird. He was too close, the kind of close that unravels thought. Every heartbeat, every breath was caught between them, caught in a tension so heavy it felt alive. Kaelin's fingers still framed her face, calloused palms rough from battle, yet his touch was careful, reverent. Do you want to know the truth, Lyra? He murmured, his voice breaking on her name. She wanted to push him away, to spit out a defiance sharp enough to wound them both. But her throat betrayed her. No. He smiled faintly, but there was no amusement in it. Only sorrow. The truth is, I never meant to choose you. Her breath hitched. I meant to scare you, he continued, his tone low, almost confessional. To remind the court what happens when they mock my rule. But then, he paused, his gaze locking onto hers, molten and unyielding. Then you looked at me like you weren't afraid. Lyra's heart twisted painfully. You're mistaking pride for courage. He shook his head. No, I'm mistaking you for everything I shouldn't want. The silence that followed burned hotter than fire. I felt him before I saw him, his presence brushing against the edge of my mind, pulling at the bond with a quiet desperation that wasn't entirely his own. But before I could turn, a shadow slipped across the far wall, vanishing like smoke. My heart lurched. Was it him, or something darker pretending to wear his echo? And then he kissed her. Not gently, not this time. His lips crashed into hers with the force of a storm breaking through walls, fierce and desperate and wild. Every ounce of his restraint shattered in that instant. Lyra gasped, but the sound was swallowed by him, his breath, his heat, the strength of his hands sliding to her waist. She should have fought, should have turned away, but the taste of him, the raw ache in his kiss, tore through every wall she'd built. Her fingers rose to his shoulders, meaning to push him back. Instead, they clutched at him. He growled low against her lips, a sound that rumbled through her bones. The world blurred, The cold air, the moonlight, the stone beneath her feet. There was only him, only the way his mouth moved against hers, demanding and yet somehow aching. When they broke apart, both were breathless. Kaelin's eyes gleamed gold and dark as midnight. "If I kiss you again," he said hoarsely, "I won't stop." Lyra swallowed hard. Her voice trembled, fragile as glass. "Then don't." For a heartbeat, something dangerous flared in his gaze, want, hunger, and something deeper, something human. "Don't tempt me," he said softly. "You don't know what you're asking." "I know exactly what I'm asking." She barely recognized her own voice, fierce, trembling, honest. Kaelin's control snapped. His arms came around her, lifting her as though she weighed nothing. The world tilted, and before she could draw breath, she was in his chamber again, the fire roaring back to life with a crack that echoed through the room. He set her down on the edge of his bed, but didn't release her. His hands cupped her face, his thumbs brushing the heat from her cheeks. "If I take you," he murmured, his voice breaking into something almost pained, "there will be no undoing it. No forgetting, no walking away." Her heart hammered. "Maybe I don't want to walk away." He froze. For the first time, the king looked lost. Then, slowly, like a man stepping into fire, he lowered his forehead to hers. "You have no idea what you're doing to me." Lyra's breath came shallow. "Then show me." Something inside him broke open. His lips found hers again, slower now but deeper, a promise written in heat and restraint. His hand slid into her hair, tangling gently, holding her as though she might vanish if he didn't. Every touch was a contradiction, gentle and fierce, reverent and wild. He wasn't claiming her, he was unraveling her. Lyra's hands pressed to his chest, feeling the thunder of his heart beneath her palms. For the first time, she wondered if the great Alpha King was just as trapped as she was. He kissed her until the world spun out of shape, until her name sounded like a prayer against his lips. And then, as suddenly as it began, he tore himself away. Kaelin stumbled back, chest heaving, eyes blazing like gold caught in flame. "Enough," he rasped. Lyra's pulse stuttered. "Why?" He stared at her, voice raw. "Because if I take another breath near you, I'll lose every piece of the man I am." Her heart twisted, but before she could speak, he turned from her. "Leave," he said. "Now." She didn't move. "Leave, Lyra." The command broke something in her, not because it was harsh, but because it was heavy with something she didn't understand. When she finally reached the door, she looked back once. Kaelin stood by the fire, his hand braced against the wall, his head bowed as though fighting the very beast in his blood. He didn't look at her when he whispered, "If you stay another second, I'll never let you go." She didn't remember how she found her way back to her chamber. The castle's corridors blurred around her like dreams half forgotten. She didn't sleep, couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, the way his lips trembled against restraint, the way his breath shook when he said her name. And the worst part was that her body still ached for his. She hated it. She hated him. She hated herself for wanting what she couldn't have. By the time the moon rose again, Lyra had made her choice. She would leave, truly, this time, not through the courtyard where he could find her, but through the servant tunnels beneath the eastern wing. She'd studied them when she'd been nothing more than a forgotten Omega scrubbing floors. She waited until the castle slept. Until the guards' boots stopped echoing. Until even the fires in the hallways dimmed to embers. And then she ran. Barefoot, heart pounding, she slipped through shadow and silence. The cloak he'd given her hung heavy over her shoulders, his scent still clinging to it. She hated that it comforted her. The tunnels were cold and narrow, the air thick with dust and secrets. Lyra followed the passage until it opened into the forest beyond the castle walls. Freedom. It shimmered in front of her like moonlight on water. She took one step, then another, until a hand seized her wrist. Her breath caught. Kaelin stepped from the shadows like he'd been carved from them. The moonlight gilded his hair, his golden eyes burning with fury and something far worse, betrayal. "You thought I wouldn't find you." His voice was a low, dangerous rumble. Lyra's throat tightened. "You can't keep me here." He moved closer, every inch of him coiled with tension. "You think this is about keeping you?" His hand rose, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. It's about not letting you be devoured by a world that would rather see you dead. Her voice trembled. Then why does it feel like you're the one devouring me? That stopped him. For one moment, the anger bled from his eyes, replaced by something she couldn't name. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the tremor in his breath. Because you make me forget the line between protecting and wanting. Lyra tried to look away, but his voice anchored her in place. You want freedom, he murmured. Then tell me you don't feel this. Tell me the fire in your blood isn't mine. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Kaelin's jaw clenched. His control was breaking again, piece by fragile piece. You can lie, he whispered. But your body won't. His thumb brushed over her wrist, right where her pulse hammered. You feel that. That's not fear. She hated that he was right. Kaelin. Her whisper was a plea and a warning at once. He drew in a sharp breath, then released her hand as though it burned him. Go. Lyra froze. I said go. She hesitated, then turned toward the forest. But before she stepped beyond the trees, his voice came again, softer, aching. One day, he said, you'll realize I wasn't trying to cage you. I was trying to keep you alive. She looked back, but he was already gone, swallowed by shadow. That night, the forest whispered her name like a secret. Lyra didn't look back again. But she couldn't shake the truth burning in her chest. She'd escaped the Alpha King's walls, but not his hold. Lyra. My name on his lips stopped the world. I faced him, breath unsteady, ready to demand answers, or run, or maybe both. But the words died in my throat as I saw his eyes, glowing with a light that wasn't his. He reached for me, then staggered, collapsing before I could move. I dropped to my knees beside him, terror flooding my veins. Whatever haunted us had finally crossed the line, and it had chosen him first. Kaelin, please, stay with me. My voice broke as I cradled him in my arms, his breath shallow, his skin burning beneath my touch. I had never feared destiny, not until it threatened to take him from me. The forest swallowed Lyra whole. Moonlight spilled through the canopy in silver shards, painting her path in broken light. The wind pressed cold fingers against her cheeks, but her body still burned with the memory of Kaelin's hands. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the far-off howl, felt like him following. She wrapped her arms around herself and pushed deeper between the pines. Freedom was supposed to taste sweet. Instead it tasted like smoke and ache. By dawn, the wilds had turned gold and gray. Lyra knelt beside a creek, scooping water into trembling hands. Her reflection looked like a stranger, pale, hollow-eyed, cloaked in a king's scent. She tore the cloak from her shoulders and flung it onto the rocks. The fur landed with a heavy thud, and she froze. The moment it left her skin, an invisible thread inside her snapped tight. A shock of heat rippled through her chest, like a tether pulled from the other end. She gasped, clutching her heart. No, she whispered, not a bond. You didn't. But she felt it, the echo of his pulse through her own. Kaelin's presence, faint but undeniable, thrumming like distant thunder. She staggered back from the cloak as if it could bite her. The connection faded to a dull ache but didn't vanish. Somewhere miles away, she knew he'd felt it too. And that meant he was coming. The next days blurred into hunger and exhaustion. She moved east, toward the borderlands, where rumor spoke of villages untouched by wolf rule. Each night she built small fires, praying the smoke would hide beneath mist. But the tether inside her pulsed, slow, certain, relentless. Sometimes she thought she heard him, the snap of a branch, the soft growl of breath behind the wind. When she turned, there was only darkness. On the fourth night, a storm rolled across the mountains. She found shelter in a ruined watchtower, curling beneath broken stone. Rain drummed against the walls, steady and merciless. Sleep took her in fragments. She dreamed of gold eyes in the dark. Of a voice that said, you can run from walls, Lyra, not from what's written beneath your skin. She woke shaking. It was dusk when she sensed him. The forest had gone silent. No birds, no wind, just the slow, steady rhythm of another heartbeat beside hers. She turned toward the shadows and saw him. His eyes fluttered open, and for a moment the world steadied. Lyra, he whispered, voice hoarse, don't look at me like I'm already gone. I swallowed hard, but the tremor in my hands betrayed me. I wasn't afraid of the darkness anymore. I was afraid of living in it without him. Kaelin stood at the edge of the clearing, cloak soaked, eyes glowing faintly in the dying light. He didn't move closer. He didn't need to. The air between them crackled with the same dangerous pull as before. You knew I'd find you, he said. Lyra's throat tightened. You followed the bond. I followed the scent of what's mine. Anger flared bright and brief. You don't own me, Kaelin. He stepped forward, boots sinking into wet earth. Then why can I feel your heartbeat when you lie? She wanted to deny it, but the bond pulsed again, proof and curse. Break it, she whispered. Whatever magic you used, undo it. His expression changed, almost wounded. You think I wanted this? He reached up, pressing a fist to his chest. The bond was forged the night I touched you. It isn't spellwork, Lyra. It's fate. Then fate is cruel. Fate always is. Rain spilled between them, glittering like shards of glass. Neither moved. Then Kaelin closed the distance in 3 strides, his hand catching her wrist before she could retreat. At his touch, warmth surged through her, wild, electric, familiar. He exhaled shakily. There. Do you feel that? Yes. Her voice trembled. And I hate it. He leaned closer, eyes burning. So do I. For a moment, they simply breathed the same air, trapped by the invisible thread tying soul to soul. Then he released her, stepping back like a man surrendering to pain. Go where you will, he said roughly. But the bond will draw us together until one of us yields or breaks. She stared at him, rain sliding down her face like tears. Then you'll have to keep chasing. His answering smile was small and haunted. You think I'll stop? They traveled together after that, not by choice, but by necessity. Whenever Lyra drifted too far, the pain of the tether pulled her back. Whenever Kaelin tried to leave her, the same agony hit him twice as hard. It was easier to walk side by side than fight the universe every mile. The days bled into uneasy truce. He hunted, she cooked. He spoke little, his golden eyes always scanning the horizon. Yet sometimes, when he thought she slept, she felt his gaze linger, soft, almost longing. One evening, they camped near the edge of the vale, where fireflies lit the air like stars fallen to earth. Lyra sat by the flames, combing her fingers through damp hair. The light painted her skin in gold. Kaelin watched from across the fire. The silence between them felt less like war, more like gravity. Why do you keep staring? She asked without looking up. He hesitated. Because every time I look away, I forget why I shouldn't touch you. The words stole her breath. She met his gaze. And when you remember, he smiled faintly. It hurts. Lyra looked down at the fire. Good. He laughed quietly, a sound that warmed more than the flames. You think pain will save you from me? I think it reminds me I'm still myself. Kaelin leaned forward, the firelight catching the edge of his jaw. You are yourself, he said. That's what destroys me. The confession hung between them, fragile and dangerous. That night, the bond flared again, stronger than ever. Lyra woke to the feeling of heat blooming beneath her ribs, a pull that made her breath hitch. Across the fire, Kaelin sat awake, fists clenched, eyes glowing. You feel it too, she whispered. He nodded once. The moon's at its height. It calls the bond to test us. Lyra rose slowly, the world spinning with that invisible current. The air shimmered, silver light crawling over their skin. When Kaelin stood, the distance between them vanished in heartbeats. Don't, she said. I'm trying, he answered, voice strained. But the bond doesn't listen to will. He reached for her as if in a dream, fingers trembling inches from her cheek. The magic between them hummed, half hunger, half destiny. Lyra felt it pulling her forward until the tip of her nose brushed his. Her voice broke. What happens if we give in? Then we stop being two. And if we resist? His eyes softened. We break. The choice hung between them like lightning about to strike. For a moment, Lyra thought he'd step back. Instead, he pressed his forehead to hers, eyes closed, breath shaking. Then let it break me, he whispered. She felt his heartbeat against her chest, hers, his, one rhythm. The moon blazed brighter, light spilling over the clearing. Every fiber in her body screamed to surrender, to let fate have its way. But Lyra did what she always did. She defied it. She pulled back, tears hot on her cheeks. Not like this. Kaelin opened his eyes. Gold burned into silver. Then how? When it's a choice, she said. Not a curse. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded, the motion slow, reverent. Then we'll wait. Dawn broke soft and blue. The bond's heat dimmed to an ember. They sat in silence, watching mist curl above the valley. Kaelin spoke first. The council will come for you. They'll claim you ran to weaken me. I did run, she said. He smiled faintly. Then let them think so. It'll keep them from hunting others like you. Lyra frowned. Others. There are Omegas born different, he said. Unafraid. Untamed. You give them hope. The words struck something deep. And you. I don't get hope, he said simply. I get you. She didn't answer. The sun climbed higher, and the tether between them pulsed, no longer a chain, but a heartbeat shared. By mid-morning, Kaelin packed his gear. The council meets in 2 days. I have to face them. Lyra stiffened. You're leaving me. I'm letting you choose. He handed her a dagger, hilt silvered and warm from his palm. Head north. There's a safe house in the cliffs of Mirror. Say my name, and they'll give you shelter. She studied the blade, then him. And if I don't go? He stepped close enough that his breath stirred her hair. Then you'll follow the bond straight back to me. A faint smile curved her lips. You sound certain. I am. His voice was soft now. You were written into my heartbeat long before either of us knew it. He turned to leave. The forest swallowed his figure, gold fading to shadow. The bond stretched thin but never broke. Lyra touched the dagger, feeling the faint echo of his warmth. Then let's see whose will is stronger, she whispered. She walked north, toward her own dawn. I pressed my forehead to his, desperate to hold the moment still. I'm not losing you, I vowed. His hand tightened weakly around mine, not in surrender, but in silent promise. Yet before I could speak again, his breath hitched and he whispered a single warning against my lips, one word that stole what remained of my certainty, run. No, I whispered, shaking my head even as his warning echoed through me. I'm not leaving you, not now, not ever. If danger was coming, it would have to face me, and it would learn that I was no longer a woman who ran from fate. I was the one who stood and fought for my heart. The great hall of Eldrose Keep no longer smelled of incense and iron, it smelled of fear. Kaelin sat upon the obsidian throne, cloak still damp from the journey. 12 highborn alphas lined the circle before him, their faces carved in stone and pride. The rumors spread faster than your orders, said Lord Varine, the eldest of them. The Omega fled your bed. Your bond with her weakens the crown. Kaelin's fingers tightened on the armrest. Does it? She defied you before the court, another added. If an Omega can walk away from her king, what stops the Pax from doing the same? A slow, dangerous smile curved his lips. Fear still stops them, Varine. Do you need reminding? Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Lightning cracked outside, echoing like a warning. Varine did not flinch. We remember the last king who let his heart rule him. It ended in blood. Perhaps your reign will, too. Kaelin rose. The torches bent in the force of his aura. The wolves nearest the dais lowered their heads by instinct. I have bled for this crown, he said, voice low and steady. I have broken cities to keep this kingdom whole. Do not mistake my restraint for weakness. Varine bowed, but too slowly. Then prove your strength. Kill the girl and break the bond. The hall went silent. Kaelin's eyes flared gold. If I kill her, I end the last prophecy binding this land. Do you wish to wake the curse beneath it? The nobles glanced at one another uneasily. Everyone knew the story. The first wolf queen had bound her blood to peace itself. If her line, or her chosen, fell unjustly, the skies would open in ruin. Varine stepped back. Then may the gods judge you, my king. They already have, Kaelin murmured. Lyra reached the cliffs 3 days later. Wind tore at her hair as she climbed the narrow path that led to a hidden door carved into the stone. When she whispered Kaelin's name, the rock groaned and opened. Inside waited a den lit by soft lamps and the scent of herbs. An elderly woman, wolf, but not noble, watched her from beside a fire. You're the Omega he marked, the woman said. I felt the bond crackle from leagues away. Lyra hesitated. He said I'd find safety here. You'll find truth first. The woman gestured her closer. Sit, child. The bond you carry isn't new. It's ancient. Born when moonlight first kissed wolf blood. Do you feel it calling? Lyra nodded slowly. It hurts. Sometimes it burns. It burns because it wants to finish its song. The woman reached into the flames and drew out a small silver charm shaped like a crescent. When two hearts forged in the same fire-resist union, the magic turns inward. It will devour you both unless you complete the circle, or shatter it clean. How do I shatter it? With truth. Truth about what? About who you are. The woman, who called herself Mile, told her the legend as storm clouds rolled beyond the cliffs. Long ago, the first Moon Queen had hidden part of her spirit in the bloodline of Omegas, a promise that one day an alpha worthy of love, not dominance, would awaken her gift again. You are that blood, Lyra, Miles said softly. And Kaelin is the storm meant to test it. Lyra's stomach knotted. I never wanted to be anyone's destiny. Destiny doesn't ask permission, Miles said with a faint smile. But it does offer choice. Love can seal the curse, or lift it. Lyra stared into the fire. Love. The word hurt more than the bond. And if I walk away, then both of you will fade. Slowly, painfully, the bond will take its due. Lightning split the sky outside. In the afterglow, Lyra saw her reflection in the silver charm, eyes bright with fear, and something fierce beneath it. She closed her fingers around the pendant. Then I'll find my own way to break it. Lyra, he rasped, pain flickering through his eyes. You don't understand what's coming. I leaned closer, refusing the distance he tried to create. Then explain it, I breathed. Let me carry the fear with you. For a heartbeat, something in him softened, then a shadow moved at the edge of the room, reminding us both that time was no longer our ally. That same night, Kaelin dreamed of fire. Of Lyra standing at the center of it, calling his name. When he woke, sweat slicked his skin and his bond screamed with pain. He rose from bed and found Varine waiting by the window. The council grows restless, the old wolf said. They demand proof you can still command the bond. Tell them to test my patience instead. They will, Kaelin. They mean to crown another. The king's growl rolled like thunder. Who? Your cousin, Darren. He already rallies the southern packs. Kaelin's jaw clenched. Betrayal always came from blood closest to the throne. Then I'll ride before dawn. To hunt her. To protect her. Varine frowned. From whom? From the ones who'll use her to break me. Lyra left Miles' cave before first light, the silver charm hanging from her neck. She traveled toward the valley, following whispers of a ruined temple said to house the Moon Queen's heartstone, the key to every bond. The forest changed as she walked. Shadows thickened, air humming with old magic. Wolves watched her from the trees, not attacking, merely waiting. She felt their curiosity like pressure behind her ribs. By dusk, she found the ruins, white marble shattered by time, vines coiling through fallen pillars. In the center, a pool of still water mirrored the rising moon. Lyra knelt beside it. If you're real, she whispered to the night, show me how to end this. Moonlight struck the pendant, ripples spread across the pool. A voice, soft and ancient, filled the clearing. To end what was begun, you must face what you fear. Kaelin, she breathed, or yourself. The vision faded, leaving her alone. Except, she wasn't. The bond flared, wild and bright. She turned, and Kaelin stepped from the shadows. They stared at each other across the ruins, neither moving. Rain hissed through the trees, silvering the world. You found me again, Lyra said. I wasn't searching. His eyes softened. The bond pulled me here. You called. I didn't mean to. He took a step closer. Then why does the air taste like your name? She swallowed. Stay back. Tell me why you left the safe house. I went looking for a way to end this. Kaelin's expression darkened. To end us. To free us, she corrected. He shook his head slowly. Freedom without each other isn't freedom at all. Lightning flashed, illuminating the agony in his face. The council wants your blood, he said. They think killing you will sever the curse. I won't let them near you. Lyra's breath caught. You risk your throne for me. For us, he said. Even if the throne burns. He crossed the distance and caught her hands. Power surged, heat, light, the bond singing through both their hearts. The moon above them blazed white, pouring silver fire around their joined fingers. Lyra gasped. What's happening? The bond's choosing, Kaelin whispered. Either it consumes us or it crowns us. He pulled her against him, forehead to forehead, breath ragged. Don't fight it this time. She met his eyes, storm and sunlight, king and man, and for the first time she didn't run. The light swallowed them both. When Lyra woke, the world was still. The ruins glowed faintly, the moon now calm above. Kaelin lay beside her, unconscious but breathing. A mark, twin to her pendant, gleamed over his heart. She touched it, warmth pulsed beneath her fingers. Miles' voice echoed in her memory, love conceal the curse, or lift it. Tears filled her eyes. Please let it be the latter. Kaelin stirred, lashes fluttering. Lyra, she smiled through tears. You're alive. He sat up slowly, blinking at the faint silver mist circling them. So are you. What happened? The curse broke, he said softly. Or maybe it began again. I felt the packs, every wolf, bow to the same heartbeat. Hours. For a long while they just breathed, letting silence speak for them. Then Kaelin reached for her hand. Stay. Lyra looked toward the dawn rising over the valley. This isn't surrender. No, he said. It's choosing. She laced her fingers with his. The tether between them no longer burned, it shimmered. For the first time, freedom and belonging felt like the same thing. He caught my wrist, eyes blazing with desperate love. If you stay, I can't protect you. I curled my fingers through his and answered without trembling. Then don't protect me, choose me. His breath shuddered, and before he could speak, the chamber doors slammed open, and a cold voice shattered the moment. It's already too late. Steel flashed in the doorway, and instinct pulled me in front of him before my mind could catch up. Lyra, move. Kaelin tried to rise, but pain crushed his voice. I didn't move. I wouldn't. Whatever enemy had found us, they would face me first, because loving him meant standing between him and every shadow that dared to threaten his life. The first light of morning bled over the mountains, gilding the ruins in gold. Lyra stood on the temple's edge, watching mist roll through the valley below. The world felt different. Alive. Every sound, the wind, the distant cry of wolves, vibrated with the same rhythm as her pulse. Behind her, Kaelin stirred. His voice came soft but certain. They'll feel it, you know. Every pack from here to the southern sea. Lyra turned, smiling faintly. You mean the bond, the peace, he said. The curse is gone. The war is over. Then why do you sound afraid? Kaelin's eyes darkened. Because peace never comes without cost. He rose and crossed the distance between them, taking her hand. The mark above his heart glowed faintly beneath his shirt, pulsing in time with her own. When one power falls, he murmured, another always rises to claim what's left. Lyra's smile faded. Then we'll face it together. He looked at her, something like awe softening the edges of his usual restraint. Together, he repeated. They rode back to the capital 2 days later. The city that had once glared with suspicion now knelt in stunned silence as the pair passed through the gates. The air carried the faint shimmer of magic, the bond's light still rippled across the land. Inside the great hall, the council waited, 12 wolves in dark cloaks, Vareen standing at their head. Kaelin's voice cut through the murmur. Vow. For a moment, no one moved. Then, one by one, they bent the knee. Vareen's gaze flicked toward Lyra, cold and unreadable. So the curse has ended, he said. What proof do we have? Kaelin reached for Lyra's hand. The joined palms glowed faintly with silver fire. You feel it in your bones, Vareen. Every wolf does. The older man's lips tightened. And what of her? Will she rule beside you? Kaelin's answer came without hesitation. She already does. Gasps rippled through the chamber. No Omega had ever shared the throne. Lyra stepped forward before he could speak again. I don't want your crown, she said evenly. But I'll stand beside him as his equal, or not at all. A murmur of approval rolled through the hall, surprising even Kaelin. He looked at her with something between pride and awe. Vareen bowed stiffly. Then may the goddess watch over her new queen. Peace came softly, almost deceptively. For a few weeks, the kingdom seemed to breathe again. Crops flourished, the border raids ceased, and the moon hung full and steady in the night sky. Yet beneath it all, Kaelin sensed unrest. Letters arrived sealed with black wax, reports of missing envoys, of whispers that the bond was unnatural, that the moon's gift had corrupted the bloodlines. He burned every letter before Lyra could see them. But she noticed his silences. The way his jaw clenched when he thought she wasn't watching. "Something's wrong," she said one evening as they stood on the balcony, the stars cold above. He didn't deny it. "The council stirs again. They fear what they can't control." "You mean us?" "I mean you," he said quietly. "You changed everything, and they'll never forgive you for it." Lyra reached out, her hand brushing his. "Then let them come. We survived worse." He caught her hand, pressing it to his chest. "You don't understand. They'll use me to get to you. They always do." His voice cracked on the last word, raw and human. Lyra stepped closer, resting her head against his shoulder. "Then they'll find I bite harder than they expect." Kaelin laughed softly, the sound rumbling in his chest. "That's what terrifies them most." It happened at the Feast of Renewal, a night meant to honor the moon's favor. Lyra had never seen Eldros so alive. Lanterns floated over the palace lake, each carrying a wish. Music drifted through open courtyards, laughter mingled with the scent of wine and pine. For a few fleeting hours, it felt like peace might last. "You were warned," the intruder hissed, stepping closer, blade glinting like a sliver of moon. I felt Kaelin's fear, raw, unguarded through the bond, and it shattered something inside me. I wasn't afraid for myself. I was afraid of losing him. "If the bond makes me your target," I whispered, lifting my chin, "then you'll have to break me to get to him." The figure paused, and that hesitation was all the proof I needed. Whatever hunted us feared our love, more than our power. Then a servant brought the wine. Kaelin poured 2 cups, handed one to her, and raised his own in a silent toast. Their eyes met across the table, his golden, hers silver, and in that moment, nothing else existed. Lyra smiled and drank. The taste was sweet, then bitter. Her throat tightened. The cup fell from her hand. "Lyra," she gasped, clutching her chest as the world tilted sideways. Kaelin was beside her in an instant, catching her before she hit the ground. "Poison," he roared. The hall erupted into chaos. Guards drew blades, nobles scattered. He pressed a hand to her back, channeling his own strength into her bond. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Don't you dare leave me." Her pulse flickered weakly beneath his palm. "Kaelin, breathe. Lyra, do you hear me? Breathe." But the light in her eyes dimmed. The bond screamed between them, a thread pulling taut toward breaking. He carried her to his chambers himself. The healers followed, but their magic faltered. The poison was unlike any known brew. Silver veins crept beneath her skin, luminous and deadly. "Find who did this," Kaelin snarled. "And when you do, bring me their heart." The guards fled to obey. He sank beside the bed, gripping her hand like a lifeline. "Don't do this," he whispered. "Don't make me live in a world without you." Her breath came shallow. "It's not your fault. It's always my fault," he said. "Everything I touch burns." Lyra managed a faint smile. "Then maybe I was meant to be the fire." Tears blurred his vision. "If you die, the bond dies with you. The peace dies. Everything dies." Her voice was a whisper. "Then, don't let it end." He bent his head over her hand, his heart breaking open. "I won't." Hours passed. The palace fell into fearful silence. Kaelin sat motionless beside her, eyes shadowed, mind tearing itself apart. Then a voice spoke in the quiet. "You called once for freedom. What will you give for her life?" He lifted his head. The moonlight through the window had taken form, soft, luminous, the outline of a woman cloaked in silver. "The Moon Queen," he breathed. "The bond between you was forged from my blood," she said. "To save her, you must surrender half your power to the old world. What happens to me? You will not die, but you will no longer rule." He looked at Lyra, pale and still. "Take it," he said. "Take everything." The spirit's eyes softened. "Then let it be done." Light burst from the air, blinding and cold. Kaelin gasped as strength tore from his veins, pouring into the sleeping form beside him. The mark on his chest dimmed, hers flared like dawn. When the light faded, the spirit was gone. Lyra's breath steadied. Kaelin collapsed to the floor, half conscious, his body trembling from the loss. Lyra woke to silence. The pain was gone, the poison had vanished as though it never existed. When she turned her head, she saw Kaelin kneeling beside her, his body frail, his once golden eyes dimmer, yet still burning with love. "What did you do?" she whispered. "Gave what I had to give." "No," she said, sitting up weakly. "No. You can't." He smiled faintly. "You asked me not to let it end." Tears streaked her cheeks. "You fool. You're full," he murmured. The door opened, and Varine entered with the council. He stopped short at the sight of the queen awake, the king pale but alive. "What have you done?" Varine demanded. Kaelin rose, unsteady but proud. "Restored what your poison tried to steal." Varine's eyes widened. "You knew." "I'm king," Kaelin said softly. "I always know." Guards moved forward, seizing the traitor. The council turned, confused and silent as Varine was dragged away. Lyra reached for Kaelin, pulling him into her arms. "What now?" she whispered. He rested his forehead against hers. "Now you rule." She shook her head, weeping softly. "Not without you." He smiled, tired but content. "I'll be beside you, maybe not as king, but as the man who loved the fire that changed the world." Lyra pressed a trembling kiss to his brow. "Then we'll burn it brighter." Outside, the first new moon rose, a silver promise written across the sky. In one violent rush, the intruder lunged. Kaelin roared my name, the bond igniting like white fire beneath my ribs, but before the blade could strike, a surge of power exploded from my hands, throwing the attacker across the room. I stared at my trembling fingers, breath shattered. "Lyra," Kaelin whispered, awe and terror woven into my name. I had no weapon, no spell, no training, and yet the truth was undeniable, something ancient had awakened in me. My hands were still shaking when he reached for me. "Lyra," Kaelin whispered, voice raw, "tell me you're not hurt." I should have asked about the attacker, the bond, the danger, anything but this. Yet all I could think about was the fear in his eyes, fear of losing me. I had never seen him look so breakable. And I had never wanted to hold someone so badly. The days following the feast were heavy with silence. The once roaring court moved in whispers, careful as if the walls themselves might shatter under their voices. Kaelin had not left his chamber. The power he had given away, the half of his spirit that kept the walls bound to his command, left him frail, human, and strangely at peace. Lyra ruled from his side. Each decree she made rippled through the realm like soft thunder. She freed the Omegas from servitude, forged alliances between rival packs, and rebuilt the temples the old kings had burned. Where Kaelin had ruled by fear, Lyra ruled by faith. And yet, every night she returned to him, to the dim chamber where the fire burned low and the former king slept fitfully, caught between two worlds. She'd sit beside him, her fingers tracing the faint silver mark over his heart. The bond still pulsed, faint but alive. Every beat reminded her he had given everything to keep it. "That power wasn't mine," I confessed, voice unsteady. "It felt ancient, like something woke inside me." Kaelin's expression shifted, recognition, dread, and something unspoken. "There are legends," he said quietly, "of a chosen soul tied to the second moon. A force born once in an age. But Lyra," he stepped closer, his breath mingling with mine. "If the prophecy has chosen you, then the bond between us is only the beginning." My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the way he said us. One evening, Kaelin woke as the moon rose full again. His voice was hoarse but calm. "How long has it been?" 17 nights, Lyra said softly. "The council obeys you still. They call me queen." His lips curved faintly. "You earned that title long before I gave it." She laughed, though tears filled her eyes. "You make it sound like a gift." "It is," he murmured. "Because no one can take it from you now." Silence stretched between them. Lyra reached for his hand, holding it tightly. "You should rest." "I'm tired of resting." He looked toward the window, where moonlight spilled like water. "Take me outside." "Kaelin, please," he said quietly. She helped him to his feet. Together they walked through the silent corridors, past guards who bowed low but said nothing. The palace doors opened to the night, and the scent of pine and rain met them. Kaelin breathed deeply. I'd almost forgotten what the world smells like. Lyra smiled faintly. Alive. Free. They stood together under the stars, their fingers intertwined, the bond humming faintly between them. Word of the king's illness, and his queen's strength, spread quickly. Within weeks, delegations came from every corner of the realm. They brought gifts, oaths, and questions. At the first gathering of the Moon Court, Lyra sat upon the throne Kaelin once commanded. He stood beside her, pale but steady, his hand resting on the carved wolf's head at his side. A young emissary from the eastern border bowed low. "My queen," she said. "Is it true the curse was broken by love?" The hall went still. Lyra's lips curved faintly. "Love broke nothing," she said. "It remade what was already broken." Murmurs swept through the chamber. The emissary nodded. "Then may we all be broken in such a way." Kaelin smiled. For the first time since the poison, laughter touched his eyes. Peace rarely lasts forever. Weeks later, word arrived of a rebellion in the south, a final echo of the council's old power. Varine's followers had gathered, claiming that Kaelin's weakness and Lyra's rise were an affront to the natural order. Kaelin insisted on leading the hunt. Lyra argued, pleaded, ordered him to stay. He only kissed her hands and whispered, "A king's burden is lighter when shared." But a wolf must answer his own howl. He left with dawn, leading a small company north through the forest of Tarath. By nightfall, the rebels were gone, burned out, scattered, vanished into myth. When Kaelin returned, his cloak was torn, his eyes brighter than they had been in months. "You fought?" she asked, running to meet him. "I remembered what I am," he said softly. "Not king, not god, just a wolf who refused to die." He caught her face between his hands and kissed her, slow and deep. It tasted like smoke and salvation. Seasons passed. The bond between them no longer glowed with fire, it burned quiet and constant, like the heartbeat of the world. Under Lyra's reign, the Omegas rose to power. New laws bound the packs together under the Council of the Moon, where strength was measured not by rank but by loyalty and heart. Kaelin remained by her side, no longer ruler, but legend. He trained young alphas to temper their power with compassion, to wield dominance like a shield, not a sword. Sometimes, when the moon hung low and the wind carried the scent of snow, they'd walk to the edge of the palace grounds, where the forest met the night. "Do you ever regret it?" she once asked. He looked at her, eyes soft as dawn. "Giving away power? No," she said. "Choosing me." Kaelin smiled. "You were never a choice, Lyra. You were the answer." Years later, the people of Eldrose would whisper the tale by firelight. They'd speak of the Alpha King who gave up his throne for love. Of the Omega Queen who turned the curse into peace. Of the night the moon burned silver, and the wolves bowed not to fear, but to faith. Children would ask if the king and queen still ruled. The elders would smile and say, "They do, somewhere beyond the forest, where the moon never sets, and the bond still sings." And if one listened closely on certain nights, when the wind moved through the pines just right, one might still hear two heartbeats echoing in time. On the anniversary of the curse's breaking, Lyra and Kaelin climbed the highest tower of Eldrose. The sky stretched endless above them, no longer heavy with storm, but wide and free. Kaelin took her hand. "Do you hear it?" She tilted her head. "The wind." "No," he whispered. "The world forgiving us." Lyra smiled, tears catching in the light. "Then let's forgive ourselves, too." He brushed a thumb over her cheek, his voice a low vow. "In every life that follows, I'll find you again. And I'll run," she teased softly. "Then I'll chase." They kissed beneath the full moon, silver light spilling like a crown across their joined hands. The bond flared once more, bright, endless, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Not because of power, not because of destiny, but because two souls had chosen to love louder than fate itself. The legend of the Wolf King's bargain. In the centuries that followed, their story became the heartbeat of the kingdom. Lovers carved the names into moonlit trees, whispering the same promise, no bond is a curse when it's chosen. The forests grew thick again. The wolves sang to the stars. And in the ruins of the old temple, a new moonstone rose, two figures entwined, silver and gold, forever gazing toward the dawn. Some say on certain nights the statues move, that the queen still laughs softly when the king calls her name. Others say the bond never broke at all. It simply became the sky itself. He lifted my hand to his chest, placing it over his heartbeat. If the moon marked you, he whispered, then others will come. And not all will want you alive. I swallowed, refusing to let fear win. Then we faced them together. But before he could answer, a cold gust tore through the chamber, carrying a whisper not of this world, my name, spoken by an unseen voice. The candles died at once, plunging us into darkness. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if fate had saved me, or claimed me.